Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Second Take Cinema, coming at you from the glorious Impala Films headquarters in sunny Southend-on-Sea. I am your host, Jamie Evans, joined as always by my magnanimous co-host.
Magnanimous.
My magnanimous. My
Magnanimous.
joined as always by my magnanimous co-host, Rory Jocelyn.
Thank you very much.
Today, we're talking about a film from the grand old year of 2013. A British film. We haven't done many British films, despite being Brits ourselves.
Yeah.
We haven't done too many British films. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are giving a second take to Richard Curtis's About Time. About Time is a 2013 romantic science fiction comedy drama film written and directed by Richard Curtis, starring Domhnall Gleeson, Rachel McAdams, and Bill Nighy. This is, as we pointed out in the notebook, a weird trend with Rachel McAdams where she kept doing time travel rom-coms.
Yeah.
But or just time travel films, but she's never the character who travels in time.
Yeah. I looked on IMDb, it said there was 4 of them.
Yeah, she did The Time Traveler's Wife, About Time, Midnight in Paris, and then Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
That's it.
So 3 of those are all rom-coms as well.
They weren't all in a row, though, were they?
They were not Doctor Strange, because that was only last year, but the other 3 were all relatively close. I think they're all within a 10-year period.
Right.
It's a lot of time to keep doing time travel rom-coms as an actress.
As the wife.
Like, she just made a real fucking niche for herself.
She did indeed.
Anyway, this film had
Technically as well, The Notebook, while there's no time travellers, it jumps back and forward in time.
It does. This is a British film, as we said, made for a budget of $12 million, and it grossed $88.5 million, so it was a success.
Nice.
Sad fact, this is actually the final film of Richard Griffiths. He's only in the film briefly. He is when he goes back in time to fix the play that goes wrong.
Yes.
And he's the large fat
barrister,
guy.
isn't he?
No, that's Richard E. Grant.
Oh, that was it.
Before that, there's the big fat guy he goes to talk to.
Right.
Who most audiences will know him as Uncle Vernon Dursley from the Harry Potter movies.
Oh, okay.
He's Harry's adopted carer,
Okay.
who's really mean. He's the one who makes Harry live under the stairs.
Yeah, I've seen it because I've seen the first one.
He's a quite iconic British actor, and unfortunately he died between making this and it coming out.
Oh, no.
I think of a heart attack or something like that.
Oh, no.
So this was actually his final film, and the film is dedicated to him.
Yes, I did see that at the end.
In terms of reception, About Time received mixed reviews from critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 70%. The website's critic consensus reads, beautifully filmed and unabashedly sincere, About Time finds director Richard Curtis at his most sentimental. Catherine Sherrard of The Guardian compared the film to Groundhog Day, noting it's about as close to home as a homage can get without calling the copyright team, and described Domhnall Gleeson as a ginger Hugh Grant, which at first is unnerving as About Time marches on. Gleeson's innate charm gleams through, and this weird disconnection becomes quite compelling. Sherrard gave the film 2 stars out of 5. Robbie Collin of the Daily Telegraph praised the comic timing of McAdams and Gleeson, but criticised the film, comparing it to a quilt, calling it soft, frayed at the edges, and oh so comfortable, giving it 3 out of 5. I think it's perfectly fine for films to just be comfortable sometimes. I get what they mean, but yeah.
I've got some thoughts on this film, so
Yeah.
I'll save them for a bit later.
Leslie Felperin of Variety called the film reassuringly bland and says there is a sense of deja vu, especially for anyone who had already seen The Time Traveller's Wife, also co-starring McAdams. Unlike that film, she has no knowledge of his powers in About Time, resulting in a fundamental lack of honesty in their relationship.
That is true.
Felperin noted British reverse snobbery would put many off of this and other Curtis films, but that this would be less of a problem among American Anglophiles and those willing to suspend their disbelief, taking the characters as British versions of Woody Allen's Manhattanites, but with less angst.
Hang on, when it says reverse snobbery, what does it mean? Like,
Poor people don't watch films about rich people.
I mean, that's got to be that's me to a T
Yeah,
with this film.
it literally is describing you.
Yeah.
There is a sense of... I know people who have got reverse snobbery.
Yeah.
And I kind of have it. I don't mind it when it's this, but I can't stand things like Pride and Prejudice and Downton Abbey.
No, because you're glorifying the time where it was acceptable to beat your wife and going, isn't it romantic? No, not really. But yeah, no, with this, I will say that the disconnects, we'll get to it in the film, but like the first half, the reverse snobbery was very strong. I was like, fucking rich people.
Yeah.
Man. And then the second half, it didn't matter. So, yeah, and we'll get to that as we get to it.
Felperin praised the chemistry of the leading couple, saying that that's what keeps the film aloft, and the supporting cast, whilst also criticising stock characters as being too familiar. Critics have pointed to the film's plot holes relating to time travel. How big or how many plot holes varied with each reviewer. Kate Erbland of Film School Rejects noted the rules and limitations of Tim's gift aren't exactly hard and fast, and the final third of the film is rife with complications that never quite get explained. I agree.
Yep.
Rules that previously applied suddenly don't apply, and the time travel rules aren't exactly tight and are occasionally confusing. Megan Gibson, writing in Time magazine, said that science fiction fans would be put off by the gaping time travel plot holes, again suggesting that Tim's father's rules are repeatedly broken. Mark Commode agreed that Curtis sets up his rules of temporal engagement, only to break them willy-nilly whenever the prospect of an extra hug rears its head. Other critics who agreed include Steve Cummins of the Irish Post, said the film is riddled with plot holes. Matthew Turner of View London, who'd called it an unsightly pile-up of plot holes and logic problems. And Nicholas Barber for The Independent, who called the explanation of time travel shockingly inadequate, and asserted that Curtis keeps leaving questions unanswered time and time again. Well, we're going to get into what we thought about this film in just a minute, but first, it's time to quiz Rory. We have 7 questions,
Okay.
all about Richard Curtis.
Oh, God, I'm not going to know any of these.
Well, we'll see. Question numero uno.
Who is Richard Curtis?
So Richard Curtis is obviously a famous writer and director
Yeah, I'm
of
only
British
joking.
movies.
I've seen a lot of not a lot. I've seen quite a few of his
Did a
things.
very well-received Doctor Who episode called Vincent and the Doctor.
Yes, he's also written for Blackadder on the TV as well.
Okay, well, let's start with which 1997 comedy movie that transported a TV comedy star to film did he write?
1993 comedy
97.
movie. Oh, 97.
British TV comedy star got a movie, and Richard Curtis wrote it.
Mr. Bean goes on holiday? Because I know he's...
Before
no,
that.
Mr. Bean goes to America?
No, before that, the first Bean film.
The Bean movie.
I'm going to give it, it's just called Bean.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
But
because
I'm
I know he was involved in the creation of Mr. Bean.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I knew he wrote Bean. I didn't know he was involved in the creation of Mr.
Yeah, that's why he wrote the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Richard Curtis has quite a strong history with British TV.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
He's an institution
Yeah.
of British TV, for
Yes.
better or for worse. Next question. Who played the 2 leads in Notting Hill? The actor and the actress who are the leads of Notting Hill.
Hugh Grant and the woman who played Erin Brockovich. Oh, we've seen her brother in things like Dead or Alive.
Yep.
Oh, I'm going to kill myself. Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant's worked in Richard Curtis films a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Something like, just like 8 or 9 films.
Oh, yeah, those two came as a package deal for a little while, didn't they?
Which Danny Boyle film was written by Richard Curtis. It's a recent film, and it revolves around a musician who wakes up in a world where no one can remember the Beatles.
I do not know this one.
Only came out about 2 years ago.
I'm going to pass, man. I have no idea.
The answer is Yesterday. Now, this one was a surprise to me. I did not know Richard Curtis wrote this film.
Okay.
Which Steven Spielberg movie was written by Richard Curtis, and it is adapted from a book that was written by Michael Morpurgo, who also wrote the excellent Kensuke's Kingdom, which is a great book.
Oh, I've not read that. And it's a Steven Spielberg film.
It is. Around 2011 it came out.
Ready Player One?
That's too late.
Oh, it is
Earlier.
Is it Warhorse?
It is Warhorse!
Yes! I saw that one in the cinema.
Okay. Which famous rom-com did he write about a woman who keeps a diary? And it's another Hugh Grant collaboration.
Yeah, Bridget Jones's Diary.
It is Bridget Jones's Diary.
Yeah.
He also did the sequel, Bridget Jones' Edge of Reason, but he did not do the third one, Bridget Jones's Baby. So, we've already mentioned that Richard Curtis has worked with Hugh Grant a lot.
Yep.
What was the first film they worked together on? So it was written by Richard Curtis and it starred Hugh Grant. The first one they did together.
Bean.
If you'd have got that, I'd have been like, well done. It's 4 Weddings and a Funeral.
Oh, shit. Well, I thought that was after Notting Hill.
No, it's before.
Oh.
It's about 2 years before.
Oh.
Last question.
Is it before or after Bean?
Before.
It's before Bean.
Bean's 97. Notting Hill is about 95 or 96, I think.
Oh, so even I got it wrong.
4 Weddings is about 93, 94. Last question.
Yep.
So he's mostly known as a writer.
Yep.
He's only directed 3 films, About Time being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
What was the first film he directed?
Is it Love Actually?
It is Love Actually.
Yeah.
So Rory scored 5 out of 7 on that quiz. Did quite well there. Well done. Anyway, we're going to move on to talking about Time right after this message from our sponsors. So I put About Time in. I've seen this once before. Around 2018, I watched it with a girlfriend at the time. Didn't know anything about it. Other than I remember seeing the poster, which is literally it's we do this a lot in British posters where it's literally just a screen grab from the film.
Ugh.
And it's just when they're
So low effort.
It's just when they're in the rain at the wedding,
Right.
laughing with each other.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked the film.
It's a nice image, but at the same time, it would have been nice to have something
more creative.
Yeah, than just going, here, we forgot to take a photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked the film, mostly. And I wanted to watch it again because there was a twist in it that I remember really liking.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see if it still held up. You, I don't think, knew anything about this movie going in, did you? I don't think you'd ever even heard of it, had you?
Literally, I messaged you the second I started to play the video, and when I've just started watching About Time, I do not have a clue what I'm supposed to be watching. I don't even know the genre.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I had no idea going in.
Yeah.
Which was nice in a way, because it meant that I went in without any expectations.
Yeah. That can be really good sometimes. Is this your first time seeing Domhnall Gleeson in a film as well?
I don't know, because I tend to... he might have... Certainly the first time I've seen him in a lead role.
Yeah.
As far as him as side characters, I don't know, because I sometimes forget side characters.
Yeah. I believe you've seen Ex Machina, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
I'm pretty sure he's in Ex Machina.
Oh, is he the lead in that? Is he the main guy that goes...
I think it's him and Oscar Isaac.
It is. And Oscar Isaac is the guy who's already there, so he's
Right.
he's basically the main character. I didn't really like Ex Machina that much.
I've not seen it yet.
Yeah, it's a loved film, but I actually didn't like the ending.
Right, okay.
I didn't think it worked.
I've got it on DVD and I've never watched it.
Yeah.
I've had it for years. Same with Black Swan. I've had Black Swan on DVD for about 12 years at this point.
Yeah.
And I've never watched it because some wanker spoilt the twist for me.
Oh, no.
And
just go in with a fresh mind,
And I keep hoping that if I wait long enough, I will forget the twist.
The problem is you're making it bigger because it's now the only thing you know about the film.
I know.
Just watch the film, because even if you know the twist, like a lot of the way the story tells is quite good.
Yeah.
Like, and again, it's the companion film to The Wrestler, which is also a great film.
Yes, yeah. So, basically, long story short, in this film... Domhnall Gleeson is the son of Bill Nighy.
Yep.
And when he gets to a certain age, 21, I think.
I think it's 21. It's mentioned.
Bill Nighy takes him aside and says, "Hey, guess what? Well, that's it. So he does a New Year's Eve party, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he kind of fucks the night up. This girl tries to kiss him, and he doesn't kiss her back.
Yeah. Isn't it an American girl that's staying with them? Or is that a different...
No, the New Year's party comes first.
Okay.
That random blonde girl, who unfortunately I don't know who that actress is, she tries to kiss him.
Yeah.
And he doesn't kiss her, and it's very awkward. And Bill
It's
Nighy,
very British awkward.
It is very British awkward. And Bill Nighy takes him aside and says, "Oh, I've got something to tell you, which is all the men in our family have the power to time travel."
Yeah.
Now, we'll get this out of the way now. The time travel rules in this film are not very hard and fast.
It's also strange that it only ever happens on the Y chromosome.
Yeah.
Like, what is it about the Y chromosome that carries the time travel gene?
Yeah, I don't know.
They never... It's like none of his family members ever bother to give a shit.
I know.
Also, the only way to ever know that is to ask your sister or something like that. And go,
That should have been the... Imagine if that was the twist.
Yeah.
It turns out the women have been time traveling this whole time as well.
that would have been so cool.
And they've been ruining each other's lives.
Yeah, also when and basically him and his sister end up conflicting each other with the way they keep jumping back to try and fix their own lives.
That'd be good.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Where's that film?
Yeah.
That's not in this film. I want that film.
So the basic rules they establish is the way you time travel is you just go in a dark room on your own, close your eyes, clench your fists, and picture where you want to go.
Yep.
You cannot travel forward in time.
Nope.
You can only travel backwards along your own timeline.
Yeah, so you can't jump into someone else's body or go somewhere you haven't already been.
Yeah, so as Bill Nighy says, he can't go back and kill Hitler. So we get some comedy shenanigans where he goes back and he fixes the day. The thing that is not made clear and then annoys me towards the end is when he can suddenly take people with him.
He takes his sister back once, doesn't
That's
he?
the leap that breaks it for me.
Yeah.
Because if you can actually take people back with you, it's one thing that Bill Nighy's kept this from his wife.
Yeah.
When you then add in, oh, you can take people with you, then it becomes really like, why have you hidden this from your wife?
Yeah, why haven't you taken her back with you to fix things?
Yeah.
Because also, it's the fact is, from the point of time that you change anything, all the memories and everything you've built with that person is forever changed. So your relationship is no longer the same. Now, where your wife doesn't know about that, she's taken a different life trajectory to you from that moment. It may not be changed very much, but it's still slightly altered. Altered from the memories you have. If you took her back with you to make those changes, then at the very least, both you and her have the same memories shared. It's... Yeah. Oh, this film
a
is
dodgy
full of
concept.
problems.
Yeah. So this film can kind of be split into two halves. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, that's how I was going to do it as well.
Half
actually.
number one is more of a traditional rom-com in that it's all about him trying to get the girl.
Yeah.
Now,
It's slow.
the girl in this case starts off as Margot Robbie, which I was very surprised because I'd totally forgotten Margot Robbie was in this film.
Yep.
She's only a small part. She's playing a Brit, doing a very.
I thought she was an American travel student.
Well, she's doing a British accent.
Is she?
She's doing a very enunciated, proper, like, oh, how do you do this sort of accent.
Oh, I thought she was still American. That's all I heard. Honestly, I didn't hear any of her Britishness. Her accent sounds like an American doing a Brit.
Well, this was my thing.
Yeah.
The British accent is proper overly,
Yeah.
oh, hello, tea and crumpets.
Yeah, which made me think she was more American than ever.
Right, I see.
I was like, oh, so there's an American who's
Yeah.
just staying with them.
And this is a typical, he's a geeky, nerdy character. She's Barbie.
Yeah.
And he's, like, fumbling. I do like that you get the paradox where he finally asks her out. So she's staying with them for the summer. And on the very last day, he asks her out. And she goes, oh, I wish you'd asked me on the first night or earlier. Maybe we could have built something together. So he, being a horny teenager, arguably at this point, goes back in time and asks her on an early date.
Yeah.
And she says, ask me on the last day.
Yeah.
And I like this bit because it's a very good example of the paradox of relationships.
Yeah. Basically, the answer was never.
But she wasn't going to tell him that.
No.
Yeah. And he kind of realises that he moves to London and gets a job as a lawyer.
Yep.
Where he meets his friend Rory.
Hey! Not a real
who's a
Rory,
completely
but
insignificant character.
Yeah, but basically, for the first half of the movie, is identical to Gleason's character.
I do disagree
I don't
on that.
like
but
the
I know
first
you
half of the movie. In
felt
the
that
second
way.
half of the movie, Gleason's character gets some cojones and is a more interesting character than Rory. But for the first half, honestly, mate, you could swap their lines and they're exactly the same person.
I do disagree, but I know you feel that way. I think they're very similar, which is why they become friends.
I think that also doesn't help is the reverse snobbery because they're both posh cunts.
Yeah, I must admit, I even got that. I was watching it this time, and I was a bit like, "That's a large house they live in."
Yeah.
Oh, he moves to London and just straight away gets
A flat.
a job in a law firm.
Yeah. This is a problem that happens a lot with Richard Curtis films. Unless they're written as stereotypes, there are no working class people. There are no real middle class people either. Everyone is upper middle class or upper class.
I don't know Richard Curtis's actual background, but I'm imagining that that's because he himself is probably...
He comes across to me, and I could be wrong, I could be completely wrong, but from the writing of things like this and Love Actually and things like that, he comes across to me as someone who went to a private all-boys school. Because the way that all the male characters are, it's in the first half, the way all the young male characters are, they're almost a beige melange of the same person. Honestly, I couldn't pick any of them out in a lineup. The only reason I remember Rory's name is because they keep mentioning it as a joke. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't... And it's my name, that helps. But honestly, it's not even that. It's because they keep on mentioning it.
Yeah, because the idea is that no one else in the film can remember it.
Yeah, and so... If it wasn't for the repetition for that joke, I wouldn't remember his name either.
Yeah.
And none of them have any discernible personality traits from each other. So... And again, they're all from that same class. They've all gone to an all-boys private posh school. Because the way they talk, the way they act, the way they are, they've all come from that same cookie-cutter mould. And I'm like, could you not just write one of these characters? Like, Rory would have been a more interesting character if he was different.
Yeah.
You know, he could still be kicked down, like, nerdy character. But by the fact that you've put him in the same class bracket and written him the same way as Gleason outside of being a little bit more nervous, if you'd given him a different class bracket, that would have given him a more distinct character. But yeah, that's the problem across all of this. All the women have the similar problem in the first half. They're all written... In fact, to be honest, with the women, it's... Apart from his sister, they're all written basically in a neutral. Yeah. There isn't really any gears. But weirdly enough, the older men are written very distinctly from each other. Bill Nighy is not the same as every other man. His brother, in fact, isn't written the same as every other man.
Yeah, Uncle something, isn't it?
Yeah, the guy that
a bit soft in the head.
Yeah, the guy Gleason moves in with in London.
That's the catch I wanted to shout out next.
Yeah.
I really like Andy, I think it is.
Yeah.
Who's like
He's an arsehole.
He's a complete wanker. But he's like an uptight, up his own arse playwright, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I don't know
he's
the
miserable
actor,
as fuck, but he's
really,
hilarious.
Yeah, he reminded me a bit of like almost like a Bernard Black type character.
Yeah.
Like a really just bitter idiot.
And that's something that I think, for me, showed Richard Curtis's age. Because all of the older male characters were distinct. You wouldn't have confused Bill Nighy and that guy. You know, they even if you didn't know the actors, the characters were distinct. They were all very separate. Yeah. With the younger characters, they were all a cookie cutter of each other, which suggested to me that this is a man who didn't know how to write more than one character for a young man. Yeah. Now, that may not be the case, because obviously Richard Curtis is a very famous and very successful writer. It just didn't come across on that front in this movie. I don't want to pound on that, but
no.
Yeah,
no.
I thought I'd make it clear because I didn't want to seem like I was slagging off Richard Curtis when he's a brilliant writer.
Yeah, I think for me they felt distinct enough for me, but I don't know.
You're not as much of a dickhead as me.
Well, I don't know. It's only this time because you pointed it out that I kind of sat there and was like, yeah, that house they live in Cornwall's massive.
Yeah, well, they're obviously rich as fuck.
And yes, he's
They
just
must
gone
be.
to. He's just moved to London, and
Yep.
fair enough, he's in a house share, but still, it's a one-person house share. That's still expensive in London.
Yeah.
I bet he was paying about £700-800 a month for that.
Yep.
One room in a house share.
Yeah. Which is how it's getting around here nowadays.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
terrible.
But anyway,
Yeah, sorry.
he then shifts focus to Rachel McAdams, who I'm pretty sure is only in this film so they could sell it to the American distributors. I
Her
noticed
Americanness has absolutely no gauge on the story.
So I noticed Universal are involved in this film as distributors.
I assume that was one of their
conditions.
Yeah.
I fully suspect that when they signed on to do the film, they were like, you have to put an American lead in it, so that we can market it to an American audience, and that's fine. Rachel McAdams is a good actor.
Yeah, and she does the part well. I don't think she was given enough to work with.
No, I feel she's underused in this.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Certainly after seeing her in The Notebook, where she had a lot more to process as an actress.
Or Mean Girls. She's an integral part of Mean Girls.
Absolutely.
But anyway, they sort of meet in one of those restaurants, one of these fucking, this is the bit I don't like, fucking trendy New York restaurants with gimmicks, and the gimmick here is that the lights are all turned off.
Oh, God.
Which they do exist.
It was blind dating, that's why, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, which they do exist. I've heard of them before. I can't think of anything stupider. And he relives that a few times. The point really in this first half.
Also, the fact that everyone that they spoke to in this blind date with all the lights off happened to walk out and be gorgeous upper middle class.
Yeah.
And you're like, really?
That's just film magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, that's the same as in films when there's a character and they're like, oh, that person's dead ugly. But actually, it's just a pretty person with glasses on and their hair tied up.
Yep.
And when they take their hair down and take the glasses off, you're like, oh, you're a supermodel.
Yeah, and they're like, go.
Yeah. You get the slow motion hair shake.
In L'Oreal, you're worth it.
Yeah. I'm worth it. The bit in this first half I wanted to talk about, because it was a Richard Curtis problem, this is.
Okay.
In Love Actually, there's a storyline where Andrew Lincoln's character is in love with Keira Knightley, who is his best friend's wife.
Yeah, I hated that story arc.
And he very pervily films her, doesn't he?
Ugh.
And then, despite her being happily married to his best friend, he turns up at her door and professes his love to her.
Oh, such a vomit.
And it's one of those things where if you completely forget your morals and you just watch the film, I guess the general tone of it is sentimental.
Yeah.
But if you think about it for even a second, you're like, you're a wanker.
Yeah.
Like, you're an asshole.
It's a complete arsehole.
The same thing happens in this film.
Yep.
Which is, he bumps into Rachel McAdams at an art gallery.
Yes.
And she has a boyfriend, Peter, I think his name is.
Yeah, who unfortunately gets kind of written out with no...
Which he's like, you can't have a boyfriend. Because he's obviously got this arrogance of, you belong with me.
Has he met her before yet?
Yeah, they've done the restaurant.
That was it. They would meet each other on a blind date. She goes off home. Yeah, and that's it. And then he meets her again. And he's there with Rory, I think, is it? Oh, no, it's his sister. He's there with his sister. And he's like, oh, that's the girl of my dreams. And he goes over to talk to her and he fudges it.
Yeah. Then he redoes it and just repeats everything she'd said, so she thinks he's exactly the same as her. And then they hang out for the day, but then her boyfriend turns up and he's like, you can't have a boyfriend, because he's like, we're meant to be together. And then he's like, what was the exact date and time you got together? And he goes back in time and stops her ever meeting her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Now this is a problem for me.
Yeah.
Because within the world of the film, we are supposed to just accept, and this is me changing, because within the film, we are supposed to just accept, well, it's because he's meant to be with her. She's not destined to be with the other guy.
Yeah. And
that wouldn't have ended well anyway. That would have, fizzled out on its own. The problem is, much like serendipity, there's nothing wrong with this guy. This guy seems like a perfectly nice guy. They're getting on really well. And then this...
They've got pet names for each other.
Yeah, then this asshole, Tim,
breaks the laws of physics.
Just goes back in time and stops them ever meeting.
Yeah.
One, he never gets any sort of comeuppance for that.
No, it's
And
just
B,
sort of viewed as that was the right move, so good.
we never see what happens to Peter from that point.
No, we
Does
see
Peter
him,
end up broken, alone, and penniless and dead?
I think we see him only once, so basically he goes back in time, meets her at the party before that guy does, or Peter, before Peter meets her. I thought they were going to do something interesting here, but they fudged it, because basically they decided not to for the romance element. But he goes back, talks to her, starts to screw it up at first, and then she's like, what? And he's like, is it Madonna or something like that? Oh no, it was Kate Moss. Yeah. It's like, I think Kate Moss, and just regurgitates what she feels about Kate Moss in the future back to her. And she's like, oh, what? And I was like, oh, this guy's coming on too strong. It's going to break it, and he's got nowhere further back to go to try and get her. And I was like, that's a cool element to show that, just because you know enough doesn't give you the right to get to the girl, because basically fudged it on delivery rather than having a natural conversation. He just walked up to her and, I like Kate Moss. I like the things you like. Come home with me. And the thing is in the film, what annoys me is it works.
Yeah, I know.
And then as they leave, Peter is about to enter the party. And I can't remember what he says, but he says something about Peter being an arsehole for some reason as they leave. And she goes, yeah, what a dick. And then and that's the last you see of Peter. And you're like, is he though? Like, it seems like the guy you're with at the moment is more of a dick. Not that she knows that. But also, why are you leaving the party with someone who literally just walked to and, I like, come with? It's like, really? Get some game, son. Jesus.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's just a weird inclusion in the film.
Yeah.
I thought.
And unnecessary.
Yeah. But they eventually end up, they do the meet cute, they get together, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is where I want to shout out my first bit of the film that I did really like.
Sure.
Because I just thought it was a really cool bit of filmmaking. We skip ahead a bit to them having been together for quite some time.
Yeah.
And the way we do this is through a montage that I actually quite liked. Whereas traditional montages obviously just cut from footage to footage to footage, this is all in the London Underground. While there's a busker playing. And Tim and Rachel McAdams, they come in, they exit out of one exit, they come in another exit.
Yeah.
And
it's almost seamless.
Yeah, it's almost as if time is moving, but also staying still at the same time.
Yeah, because the underground doesn't move.
Yeah,
really.
The busker doesn't move, the underground doesn't change, because the underground is, a timeless symbol of London at this point. It's as timeless as Big Ben.
It shows at least months, if not a couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's at least... Yeah, you're right. It's at least months and possibly a couple of years. Actually, no, it can't be a couple of years because he only just moves in with her at the end. But you basically see in this montage that he introduces her to all of his family.
Yeah.
And that they get on quite well with her is something like, there's none of that, oh, I hate my in-laws in this family. They all get on swimmingly.
That's right.
I liked that. I thought that was a pretty cool idea, actually. We then get a scene at their flat where her parents are visiting from America.
Yes.
And this is the second half of the film now, which is McAdams and him are together. That's how I split the film in half.
Okay.
It's the traditional rom-com, which ends with getting the girl.
Yep.
And I'm not saying this is directly the halfway point, but for me, this is where the two narratives... the narrative changes.
Sure. I'd split it a little bit later, though this is a good scene in an otherwise bad first half.
Yeah. So they're now together, and the film now becomes much more about how the time travel affects their family life.
Yeah.
And her parents come to... And I just thought this was pretty funny. And annoyingly, I've written some quotes down here, and I've not written the context that they're in, so I've forgotten some of it.
Right.
The first one, which I do remember the context of, is she's freaking out about her parents coming. And he's like, what are you worried I'm going to say? Like, and he makes some offhand joke about oral sex. And he's like, I'm not going to talk about oral sex. And then when they turn up...
Oh, no, she says to him, you're fine, you can say what you want, just don't talk about oral sex.
Yeah.
So he went, oh, can I talk, do they know we've had sex? Yeah, just don't talk about oral sex.
Oh, right.
She doesn't explain it, she just says that.
And then when they turn up, and it's really awkward, and they realise that they're living together, he, just blurts out, no oral sex, I promise you. And that made me laugh. The other line, which I can't remember where this came in, but it must be around that same time. It's a line... I don't remember what the line... Annoyingly, I do not remember what the setup for it was, but I've just written down the line. oh good, I can be a confident heterosexual again. But I don't remember.
I don't remember the context. I remember the line weirdly, but not the context for it.
Oh good, I can be a confident heterosexual again.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Carry on.
So then, does the wedding come before or after his sister? I don't remember.
Before.
Before, right, so it's the wedding and then that, okay. Yeah. The last bit I've got here is the wedding. I like the wedding. The wedding is cheesy.
Yeah.
It's very sentimental.
Yep. It's
very British indie movie. Oh, let's be quirky, shall we, darling?
Yeah.
Where everyone's happy. I struggle with stuff like this because I can't imagine a family being this happy together. But they're all it buckets it down with rain. Now, I quite personally, something about rain always works for romance scenes for me, probably because I love Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Kiss in the Rain Notebook as well.
Yeah, but realistically, in real life, British people, if they were at that wedding and it started raining and the tent split open, they'd be like, fucking hell, this is terrible.
Well, not this class.
Get inside, geez. Well, even them, they'd be like, oh, bloody hell, Jeeves, get the car.
Benson!
Bring me an umbrella, please.
The Chardonnay is ruined.
But here, everyone's just kind of laughing, which is very nice, and it's a very feel-good scene.
Yes, it is. I think it's building up to what happens next, though. I think is why it's meant to give you that top elation, because what's coming next is a bit darker.
It's a very fairy tale scene.
Yeah.
They have a kid. Tim and Rachel McAdams, they have a baby.
Ginger hair.
And we skip ahead again to the baby shower.
Yes.
The baby shower's before the baby's born. This is like a post-christening party or something.
Something like that.
It's a gathering. It's a gathering of people.
The baby's at least a year old because I think it's waddling a little bit. But it's
pulling itself up and stuff in it.
Yeah.
All his friends are there, including Andy the Angry Poet.
Yep.
And his family, and they're expecting his sister Kit Kat.
Yes.
I don't remember Kit Kat's real name. Kaylee. And something that's been hinted at throughout the film here is that she's got a really shitty dating history, where she always picks bad boys, and the boy that she's with at the minute, who she met at the New Year's Eve party at the beginning, she's not entirely happy with him.
Well, no, he cheats on her, I think. And
he cheats on her.
Yeah, breaks her up.
And she's relapsed into drinking heavily.
Yes, and then she's driving to...
She doesn't turn up at the party, does she?
And when he does late, they ask him, well, where is she? And he's like, I don't know, we had an argument, she drove here, is she not here yet?
Yeah.
And then you get to see what happens with her. Before this point, though, there is one bit where he goes back in time to fix something before the baby's born. And when he comes back, he comes to see the baby, and the baby is...
No, this bit. He goes back to stop the car crash.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she has a car crash in a purple Fiat Panda.
Yeah.
And, it's basically injured, horribly wounded in hospital.
Yeah. And he's like, well, that's okay, I'm a time traveller, I'll go back and fix this.
Yeah.
But the problem is, and this is the twist that I mentioned.
Yes. I like this twist.
I liked it, but you know what? I'll admit it didn't hit as hard this second time.
I think the reason is because
it doesn't...
no, it's not only that. I think it's because nothing becomes of it.
Yeah. Other than
it's squandered.
Other than it just establishes a new rule for the time travel.
Yeah, but the thing is it's so important. So basically, he goes back in time to change her having the accident. All good. Comes back, goes to look at his child,
and it's a different kid
with different hair color, everything. He's like, and when he speaks to his dad, it's like, well, you went back and changed something before you had the baby, so a different sperm get into the egg.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that child that you thought you had is gone.
Yeah.
Like,
once you have a kid, you can't ever go back again.
Yeah, for fear of changing the child.
Yeah. Now, here's my problem with this one bit.
But that's it. It never comes back.
If I'm getting too logical, here's my problem with this bit.
Sure.
Him going back should not fix this.
It doesn't fix the kid.
He does. Yeah, he fixes the kid. He puts the kid back. He does. So he goes back and lets her have the car accident again.
Yes.
And when he comes back to the present, his kid's back. His original kid. Because he comes in and he's like, oh, thank God. And he's like picking it up and stuff.
I do remember the kid goes back to being Ginger later, but maybe I must have taken that wrong then. Because I thought it was that he must have at another point tried to change history again. And it changed the kid again back to a Ginger, but not necessarily the same kid.
Yeah, it's the same kid.
This is the problem, is that's a really cool element. if it was literally impossible to time it in such a fashion that you get the same sperm. And the same egg.
This is what I'm saying. He shouldn't have been able to,
Yeah.
because he. Yeah, okay, you could say...
what's weird is the dad even tells him it's impossible.
Yeah.
And then he just does it.
Yeah, and you could say, well, he went back and undid what happened to Kit Kat,
Yeah.
but he didn't undo it exactly. He still changes it, because yes, he lets her have the car accident, but this time him and Rachel McAdams are there for her at the hospital.
Yes.
And they support her and all that sort of stuff.
So the timing of the sex, that would have enabled the sperm to get to the egg, would have been a slightly different time.
Yeah. The problem with this is and you get this a lot in film, it's how good the idea is and what the potential of the idea is versus the form you're trying to fit the story into.
Yeah. In a darker story, this would have been so much better.
His kid would be lost forever.
Yeah.
And that's a great idea. I love that idea.
Also, the idea of having to adapt to the fact that you don't have a connection to this child in the way that you thought you did.
Yeah, it's not your kid.
Yeah.
You haven't raised it.
Yeah, so even though it's biologically yours, it's kind of not yours at the same time. That's such a cool story element. Again, completely squandered, missing from the story.
And what this does is it kind of establishes a new rule, which is once something like that happens, i.e. a kid being born, you can't ever go back past that point again.
Without having changed so much more important stuff.
And the reason that comes into play is eventually his dad gets cancer.
Yes.
And dies.
Now,
and I did like the fact that they've basically... I like the line where he says, how many times have we had this conversation? And you realise that he's tried to say goodbye to him. Like, the final conversation they have, he's had that conversation many times.
Yeah. What I like... So, just before we go on, the halfway point for me, the point where it switches into a movie from the movie that I really didn't enjoy to a movie that absolutely sold me, was the sister having the car accident. Because everything that follows that point, I think, is an excellent film. And it is only about half the runtime.
If that.
Yeah, so the first half is too long and not very good. But this part, I love all of this.
Yeah.
Because it's consequences for your actions, which is not at all in the first half. There's no consequences for any of his actions.
Which, to be fair, could you not make the argument that you need the first... Maybe not as long, to be fair, but maybe you need the... It's sort of like Click. Have you ever seen Click?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
The first Click splits in half quite easily as well, which is the first half is all silly shenanigans with the remote, and then the consequences come later.
Yeah.
Could you make the argument that you need the silly shenanigans at the beginning and him getting away with everything so that when the consequences come knocking, it has the impact of, you thought you could get away with doing this, this, and this?
Two things that differentiate something like Click from this. Number one, Click is a pure comedy. So, where it's a pure comedy that happens to have an emotional heart later on, this isn't a comedy. Not really. It's got comedic elements to it, but it's not a comedy film. It's not Ace Ventura. It's not Airplane. So, as such, the going outright zany, and this never goes outright zany either. So, where it's trying to keep itself grounded with this absurd idea, and also what it's doing with it. Like, Click, it's just him muting a guy like Terry Crews singing and dancing in the next car, but it doesn't really affect the world around him. It only affects what he's seeing. Whereas with this, Gleason's character is going back in time, affecting everyone else's lives and manipulating people. And it's not played for laughs, and it's not funny, but it's also... certainly the stuff he does to the wife should have some penance earlier on, and also it needs to be a lot shorter. I do not give a shit. Like, his whole storyline, being a lawyer with Rory and all of this other stuff, literally meaningless. Cut it all out the film. It's all pointless. And if anything, it just slows down your runtime for literally no payoff. Rory doesn't come back later in the film even, apart from when he does one thing where he's won the lawsuit. Yeah, but that's one joke out of all other people also telling jokes. You could cut Rory from that scene. You could even cut Rory from the point where he wins the court case, because at that point, who the fuck's Rory and who cares? Like, literally, the irony being that he's written a whole character that no one can remember, and honestly, you should have cut him from the film. And I don't mean to sound bad for the actor, but, like, narratively, he doesn't need to be there. It slows down the pacing. But yeah, with the second half, where we get a lot more of the consequences of actions, it makes more sense because in something like Click, you get one scene of that pretty much, which is the bit where his mother or father is passing away.
His dad.
His dad's passing
No.
away.
You're misremembering Click, mate. The whole second half of Click is not a comedy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the whole second. Honestly, I don't think there's any film that makes me cry as much as Click.
Click's a surprisingly good film, considering it's Adam Sandler as well.
I know, that's why it caught me so by surprise.
Yeah, that's what we'll have to cover at some point.
Yeah, we will do. Because you watch the... Honestly, the only reason we don't is every time I've seen Click 3 times, and I can't believe I'm letting an Adam Sandler film have this kind of impact, but every time I see Click, I am not right for weeks afterwards.
Yeah, it's quite a churning film.
It, like, affects me. It puts me in, like, a mental space.
Yeah.
That I find it hard to get out of.
Yeah. So this film, the second half actually, because it's not meant to be a comedy the whole way through, or even at the beginning, it's just let's watch these two people romantically get together. Oh, here, fucking stalker alert. You know, just unfair balance of power in the relationship because he knows everything that she doesn't, manipulates her, essentially. And there's no payoff for the negative things he does to her in her life, let alone to other people in her life. That's the negative, and that never even pays off in the second half. But it does
lead to her feeling a bit underutilized for the whole film.
Yeah, because she just kind of cruises with whatever he's saying.
Once they're together and married,
she's irrelevant.
She's just there. She's just the wife.
Yep.
She's not given any of the interesting storylines.
No. But the second half, everything that leads up and everything he changes immediately has reaction and has blowback, and I love that. And as you say, when Bill Nighy's character is shown to have this cancer, he keeps jumping back to see his father at certain points. And as you say, there's that whole, how many times have we had this conversation? There's a point where him and Rachel McAdams decide that they're going to have another baby, and he knows that as soon as they have the baby, his father's already passed away. That's the point of no return. He can't
ever go
back and see his dad. So he goes back one more time before the baby's born, and it's different. And he goes, "Oh, you're here. How's it going?" And then he just and this is brilliant acting by Gleeson. You can see the whole problem on his face. He says nothing, but you see every single facet of that emotion. And Bill Nighy as well plays it really well. He goes, "Oh, this is actually it," and he recognises it. There is only one downside to how this is played.
The bit, I don't know if it was for you, but the bit that's not clear is, does Bill Nighy retain the memory of all the different times Gleeson's come back? That is left deliberately unclear, I feel.
Yeah, it is definitely, because I think the suggestion is he's come back and said, "Hi, Father, I'm from the future." Because obviously Bill Nighy knows that Gleeson is able to time travel, and they've had conversations talking about what happens after his death several times. I think that's the suggestion. But yeah, you are right. It's not very clear that but he must know, because he says, "Oh, how many times have we had this conversation?" out of nowhere, seemingly. So he's obviously done it multiple times. Maybe that was set up for the fact that he keeps going back. But this last occasion, it's heart-wrenching. It's really well played by both actors. The one negative on it, and it's not with their performances or the scene in and of itself, it's the point in time in the story when he goes back. He goes back just before the baby's born, and it's like, well, sorry, at that point, the egg and the sperm have already met. You needed to do it before the point of conception, not after. It made no sense, but...
I'm not a huge fan of the fact that when he says to him, "What's the last thing you want to do?" because this is the last time, and they go back to when Domhnall Gleeson is a child, and they're on the beach. That both works and doesn't work for me. It works as an emotional level because it is, like, sad.
Would you not go back to when you were in your early 20s?
I feel like a parent, if they knew they were never going to see you again, I feel like they would want that back.
Interesting.
The problem is, for me, and I guess the film has never said that they can't do this, because it did say, didn't it, that you can go anywhere in your own timeline?
Yeah.
The fact that... So... What happened? Does he travel back, become a child again, and then when he goes to the future, grows up into Domhnall Gleeson again? I'm
guessing so.
It must be,
because he's only inhabiting the child version of himself.
Yeah, and it is fine.
Because when he goes back in time prior, all the clothes he's wearing at that moment in time
change.
changed to what there should be for the era.
Yeah, there's no grandfather paradoxing happening here.
No, so
there's no don't meet yourself sort of thing going on.
So I think at this point, when he went back, he just went back into his younger body and then came back out of it again.
Yeah, and it works on an emotional level, but on a logic level, there's a little bit of me that finds that a little bit stupid.
Yeah. The other thing as well that is a little bit fast and loose on this, they say you can't travel forward in time, right? The problem is once you've gone back in time, you are travelling forward in time.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to go forward.
You can only travel forward back to the point that you left.
The other big thing he has to do is he takes Kit Kat back to the very first night.
Holds her hands in the cupboard and brings her back
to the New Year's Eve night.
So that she can reject the guy.
Yeah, stops her from ever meeting him. But again, controls her life he basically sets her up with his friend by being like, oh, in one version of the future you were with... But by telling her that he's now predestined that she's going to end up with him.
Yep. Isn't that how he stops her having the accident and then he has to change it back?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he essentially saves her from the accident and from her life of sadness, only to then put it back to save his own kid.
And then your lesson for the film is, at first he lives every day twice, doesn't he, at first, is what his dad tells him to do.
Yeah, live every day twice, live it once, and then the second time you take in everything and will notice the beauty of the world and of life, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I like that idea.
And then the point is eventually he stops doing that and just... Basically, we've spent 2 hours to learn the lesson, live every day like it's your last.
Yeah. Which is
the most basic bitch lesson films have been teaching since fucking the dawn of time.
Yeah, if they could cut half an hour out of the first half, that'd be great. Because it's a good lesson to learn still, but I could have done with half an hour of my life back to live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, what I will say is, back to something I mentioned earlier, which is that I think Gleason's character and the character of Rory are basically the same character. The second half, again, Gleason actually has stakes that he needs to change, so his character becomes more defined and a lot more interesting. However, one of the things, we discussed this before we did this show, you stated that the difference with Gleason's character and the character of Rory is that Rory is, abused is the wrong word, but he's basically... Everyone's
whipping boy.
He's everyone's whipping boy. Everyone's just like, who the fuck are you? Oh, hello, Robert, or whatever. Any other name but Rory, basically. He's so inconsequential. He's always nervous, and he always stuffs up. When he's trying to say something in an articulate manner, he always ends up somehow ruining it. The thing is, Gleason's character is identical, certainly in the first half, because every time he first meets people, he stuffs it up. The only difference is he gets to go back and redo it.
Yeah.
And that's very much set for me in this sequence, because he lives the day the first time, and the first time he does the court case, and they don't know if they're going to win it or not, him and Rory are both at the stand like, oh, we could be screwed, and they're both as elated as each other, like, oh my god, I can't believe we actually managed to do it. He then goes back and lives the day the second time, the way his dad tells him to. He now knows he's going to win the court case. So he goes in, he's just enjoying everything, and then Rory's still at the same point, like, oh, I don't know if it's going to win, and he's just like, yeah, I got this, we got this, bro. And then it basically turns around and goes Wagwan into the judge over there, and you're like, well, that's the only difference between these two. He screws up as much as Rory, but he gets to change it.
Maybe that's the necessity of having the Rory character then, is he's there as the example of this is what you would be if you didn't have this power.
Yeah.
As in, this is what you'd be destined to be if you weren't doing this sort of thing.
It's not defined well enough to state it that way or any other way. Rory's character ends up just kind of being there with no real reason.
So the other plot hole for me, which is, again, in the time travel being vague, and it's my last thing, how aging works for him and for Bill Nighy. Because here's the thing. If you're going back and living every day twice, you're still living a day. So say a human lives 80 years... and you relive every day from the year 1 to 40 twice, you would die at 40, technically.
No, I don't think it works that way. Here's the reason why. When you go back into the body at that time.
So in theory, then, why does any of the men in this family ever really die? wouldn't you just keep going back to your younger self and living your life over again?
I'll be honest. I think I actually know the reason. It is. I think, to be fair, it is explicitly mentioned in the film because of the kid thing. Because of the fact that, you know, if you were to go back and live your life again, you might not meet your wife. You might not have your kids. You might not have. It's mentioned, and to be fair, eventually the story is, no matter how much you keep going back to meet things, like with the father. That's the main thing with the father storyline. You can only go back to the well so much, and then it's like, actually, there's a point where you have to let go. Even with time travel, you have to let them go because you need to move on with your life. And again, he's got every reason, every opportunity to keep going back and seeing his dad. But there is that moment that even with time travel taken into account, he needs to move on. I think that's a pretty damn good storyline to tell. Honestly, appreciate the second half of this film. The second half of this film, for me, is a piece of art. I fucking love it. It made me cry. I did not... certainly after the first half, where I'm like, this film is fucking dog-end. I'm not invested at all in this film. The second half completely turned it around. And that's why I'm a bit miffed that they didn't cut half an hour out of that first half to get me to that point quicker. Because there are a lot of good scenes in this film. There are a lot of good characters. And I'm just... that half an hour's worth of delay is just too much. Chop it down, get us to the quick, and get us to the really important, meaningful storyline. That first half has no meaning. I think that's the biggest issue for me. This film is a tale of two halves. The first half has literally no meaning. We're just going through the motions. And then the second half is absolutely chock full of meaning. Either spread it out in the script, or if you're not going to spread it out in the script because you want to have that click-style moment, the first half is a bit more jolly, trim it down and understand that it's too vapid to fill half of a 2-hour movie.
Because the whole thing's marketed as a rom-com, because that's what he's known for. It's like Click, isn't it? Click's marketed as a typical Adam Sandler goofy movie.
Yeah. But here's the thing,
and that can sometimes work in your favour, and sometimes it can work against you.
But Click didn't get to the point where he's talking to his father at the hospital and then go, better put in a gag. And that's essentially what the first half of this film does. It's like, well, we've got nothing to say here, but we've got to put in the rum bit because if there's no
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying. Click's the same thing. There's nothing of value in the first half of Click.
But it's shorter and it's funny.
I don't think it is. I think it's about an hour of the runtime.
I don't think so. We'll have to watch it again to
when
verify.
we watch it, we'll have to verify.
But also the fact that it's a comedy means that you give it a little bit more grace because it's genuinely doing something funny if you find that sort of humour funny. Whereas this isn't funny. It's not even that romantic because he's manipulating her. Yeah. And where there's no meaning, it's vapid. Yeah. And all the characters are a blancmange.
Yeah, I liked... I liked elements of it, of the first half.
Bill Nye shines throughout this film, to be fair.
I enjoyed the film as a whole less this time than I did the first time. I enjoyed it a lot more the first time. I thought the chemistry between the characters was much better. It wasn't as good as I remembered it being.
What about Gleeson Knight? I thought their chemistry was very good.
Yeah, it was fine. It was very okay for me.
I wasn't 100% sold on Gleeson and McAdams as much.
No.
But having said that, we only watched The Notebook a few weeks ago, and the chemistry with her and Gosling was much, much more.
But yeah, I mean, I still enjoyed the film. I certainly didn't hate it or anything like that.
It's not a terrible film.
It's a film that I would probably watch it again years from now. It's not going to be something that's on heavy rotation in my watch list.
Yeah, I'd watch it again. Maybe with a girlfriend rather than on my own. But yeah, I could see myself watching this again. I could see myself editing half an hour out of the first half and then watching it a lot more.
We don't condone that.
No, we don't do that at all.
We don't condone it on this podcast.
No, I'm only joking. But at the same time, it's honestly, it's annoying because how much I love the second half of this film. That's why I say
doesn't
it.
Work for you.
Just so want the first half to work, and even a slither as much as the second half. And there are elements that are still good in it. Gleeson is a good actor. Bill Nye always shines. I mean, it's Bill bloody Nye. He's amazing in everything.
Yeah.
I just want more. I just want it to be more concise. But overall, good film. I could recommend it. I think.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a wrap on About Time. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to us. If you could possibly give us a like and a subscribe on whatever podcasting app of your choosing. If you could leave us a review, that would be phenomenal. That's how the show grows. It's how we get the algorithm to show us to people. In the meantime, if you would like to check out some of our other shows, we also have VGMP, the Video Game Movie Podcast, which is another movie discussion show with a little bit more of a comedic bent, where Rory and I focus on movies adapted from video games. Obviously, they famously have a reputation for being terrible, and we decided to look for ourselves and see if that applies across the board, or if we can find any positive ones. You can also check out our audio drama, our narrative audio drama, full cast, Haunted the audio drama, which is sort of a Doctor Who meets the X-Files type thing, with a long-running storyline interspersed with Monster of the Week episodes. You can also find that on all good podcasting apps by searching Haunted the audio drama. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.